Hey, everybody. This is Joe. This is part one, I guess, of the 1,000 subscriber special, which is a commentary track on the very first episode of Same Name, Different Game, the Life Force Salamander episode. So I haven't watched this episode in a while, so this is going to be my first time sort of checking this out in a minute. And so I'm just going to watch it and sort of revisit it and hear my thoughts on it. So let's go ahead and get it started here. I'm clicking the old play button. The original opening theme. You can see the fonts all changed too. I was just using a standard, I think that's Times New Roman maybe, I don't know, but I switched it out for the video game style font several episodes in. The original theme was a song by a band called King's Horses, which is a band that my very good friend Matt is in, and then I replaced it. Now it's The Freshest Cat Possible by White Wrench Conservatory, which is a different band that my very good friend Matt is in. This was all filmed in my office in a house I lived in several houses ago. This is when I still lived in Wisconsin. And I had a lot more hair on my head and a lot less on my face, as you can see. So, and the audio mix is not especially great on this. So the dialogue is very quiet of me, and the voiceovers and the game music is a lot louder. So this is me sort of explaining the premise of the show, which obviously by now we all know what the premise is. And there is my then much smaller game collection behind me with a bunch of wrestling DVDs and stuff as well. I miss that futon, actually. I really like that futon. My parents have that futon now. Actually, it was my parents' futon, and they gave it to me when I moved out, and I gave it back to them when I moved to the East Coast. So, yeah, I just used the old 16-bit Konami intro there, even though this isn't really a 16-bit game that we're talking about. Gradius 2, that's a thing that I plan to get to eventually. And I'm sort of explaining here the difference between Salamander and Life Force as far as the titling situation goes, which is just a big sort of cluster, and using an OC remix version of a Life Force song, which is not something that I really do anymore. I use original game audio now. You'll also notice that there's no music playing behind me when it's just me, which eventually I started to realize was pretty awkward. And I think episode 11 is where I started using sort of what my grandfather refers to as traveling music. My grandfather was a news reporter for many, many years and edited his own stories. That was sort of the deal. When he worked in television, you did your own stories and then you edited your own stories, which is not really the case anymore. But when he did, that was the deal. And so he would always refer to that stuff as traveling music. He's helped me tremendously get a good handle on the editing process a lot. A lot of arcade flyers. That's something that I think has become almost a hallmark of this show, is taking the arcade flyers from arcadeflyers.net and or arcadeflyers.com and using them. So some box arts here, the Famicom box art on the left. And actually, I really wish I had the Famicom version. The cartridge is this cool translucent blue, and there's some extra background effects and stuff that aren't in the NES version, but I didn't have it then to do it. And there's some old episodes I'd like to revisit, but surprisingly this one is actually not one of them. This episode is sort of like possibly overly comprehensive as far as what gets covered here, that I don't really feel the need to go back and do this again like I have with some other episodes. But there's my boxed copy of Life Force, which I'm not a boxed collector. Some people ask about that and stuff. I'm not really into that. It's a boxed copy of Salamander too. It's more of a thing as if I come across it and it's affordable, I will get the boxed copy. But I definitely am not searching for boxed games, as you can see by the large shelf of unboxed NES games behind me. And I do love that artwork. I love the box art for Salamander. It's like the lock screen on my phone is that artwork with the big space snake dragon. So, also, this is before, there's a little highlight. That's a nice little effect, if not a little clumsy. But yeah, so that's not the best labeling. Eventually that would move on to also being the blocky sort of like video game style font, and then eventually I realized that it would be better to see if I can find the logos of these systems and put them there. So any episodes, I think past like the Street Fighter episode, which is kind of recent, I use the actual logo, except for arcade. There's no arcade logo, so I just use the video game text for arcade games. But other than that, I use the actual official system logo art to differentiate between, you know, which is which. There's my Hori, I'm sorry, that's not a Hori, that's an Avenue 6 pad, not a Hori pad. That's one of the 6-button pads for the PC Engine. Yeah. So the screen just looks very empty. It feels very empty, as I was saying before with the labeling. So I didn't label them, which is kind of weird. That was my first zoom. That's something that's stuck with the whole show, is the showing the side by side with the slight zoom on which one you're hearing at a given time, which I'm still pretty happy with. But it's like a void with two little, you know, like two little screens in the void. So now you've noticed I use box art or arcade flyers or, you know, something to make it feel less like just sort of gazing into the void and feeling like it's a big empty splotch. So, yeah. And there's the famous Moai heads on both sides. Yeah, that's right. The NES version, yeah, they drew everything to fit without having to scroll up and down, which is actually something that I like about the NES version. No, there, yeah, I mentioned the fifth Salamander thing with the Japanese version, and I just mentioned it there again. Man, this soundtrack is so good, too. Just both. Oh, no fade. That was very nice. Good work, Joe. Way to not fade that music at all. Man, this was like 5 years ago, right? Five or 6 years ago. I can't believe I've been doing this for this long. I look so fresh-faced and with hair. Oh, also swearing. Yeah, I tried at this point not to. I occasionally use what might be considered, you know, appropriate for like primetime television type of swears, but I do swear a lot in my normal life. And if you listen to any of the podcasts I'm on, you know that. But for the show, I decided that even when it sounded natural, it sounded kind of forced. And I'm not trying to be another James Rolfe, although I respect his work a lot. So I don't swear anymore. But I used to swear on the show quite a bit, actually, in some of the earlier episodes. That's kind of an awkward freeze frame, but it works. This is also before I have better video equipment for a lot of stuff. The problem with the NES is that you have to get a mod done to get a good video output. And actually it's the same with the PC Engine, but my PC Engine now is modded to get much more high quality video output. But a lot of systems you'll see, especially the 16-bit systems, SNES and Genesis, you'll notice the quality of the game footage is way better. See, there's like weird interlacing stuff happening here on these freeze frames because of the quality of the capture. You know, newer videos, you won't see that, depending on the system. NES games, unfortunately, I'm still capturing. I have a better capture card, but I'm still capturing, you know, interlaced, sort of lower quality resolution footage, just because that's what the NES puts out. It doesn't put out a progressive signal through composite, or a good signal through composite. So yeah, so this is the stage by stage breakdown, and I don't really do that much anymore, partially because there's not a lot of games that sort of demand it, but also because I think potentially it's tedious to actually go stage by stage. This is still one of the longest episodes. Some of the more recent ones have gotten longer again, in part because I've been covering more games rather than just, 2. If I did this episode now, I probably would have played the arcade version in MAME and talked about it as well. But at the time, I was pretty set on 2 games. I was also just getting started. I didn't really know, and actually, now that I think about it, I said I have a better capture card now, but I just realized when I was doing this, I don't think I had a capture card at all yet. And what I was doing is I had a setup. No, I definitely didn't have a capture card yet. It's swearing again. More swearing. Also, the lighting is really bad. This is just the lamp that was in that room. There's an overhead lamp that was like the middle of the night that I shot that. I didn't have a capture card at this time. What I would do is I had a mini DV cam, and I had a splitter that I had set up. So I would take the composite cables and I would split them so they went into the TV and into my DV cam. So there's probably some signal degradation from splitting it like that. My capture card now just has a pass-through. So I plug it into my capture card, and my capture card has an output, and I plug that into my TV. But splitting the signal, a composite signal again, is already, not very good. It's a bad signal split, so it's probably even worse. So yeah, I still really like the stage design differences in the NES version more. It's more interesting. It seems like Konami wanted to be more faithful to the arcade port or the arcade version with the PC Engine port, but they sort of went a little bit afield with the NES version, and I think they probably made the better decision for it. So yeah, so for several episodes, the first several episodes, it was all using that mini DV cam setup that I was talking about, with the big splitter and everything. And I think it's somewhere around it'd be hard to say even at this point. I know the Resident Evil one, I used that setup because I had to go through like
it's the disco bot from hell.
7 or 8 tapes to capture all the footage for Resident Evil when I did that episode. So it was definitely after that one that I got an actual capture card, and I had a Dazzle for a while, and now I have an Elgato, which has served me very well. So yes, that's true. It makes no sense whatsoever. And again, how many times do I say fuck in this episode? It's like, I mean, yeah, so I cut that out. And again, I don't think I wasn't trying to be edgy or whatever. That's just kind of how I talk, and I thought that it was being like more honest to myself to just present the way that I talk. But in hindsight, I'm not interested in doing that. you know, ass, damn, bastard, even, as I just said, are sort of fine for the newer episodes, but I even generally avoid those. And I don't think Roger has ever sworn. I think I've always kept swears away from Roger, and I would like to keep it that way. That was a surprisingly nice little transition, actually. So yeah, this was also before I had a mic, and that's part of the reason with the sound mix I mentioned right at the beginning. The sound mix isn't great. Part of the problem was that I didn't have a mic. I was using my camera's onboard mic, and then I used a USB mic to record the voiceover stuff, so it was much clearer and much louder. Now I have a lavalier mic that I use for both. I can't believe I didn't get a copyright strike for putting this House of Pain song in here, but there you have it. Yeah, some of the videos have had songs removed. There was a Misfit song in one of the Halloween episodes that on YouTube, it's not in there, but there's a link in that video, I think in the video description for that one, to on Daily Motion. Now you can see the unbuggered version of that. No, it's not nearly that badass. Yeah, so that's the final boss. Not a super impressive final boss, though the Gradius series is sort of not known for its challenging final bosses.
In the PC Engine version, Zelos comes right up your ass and then starts shooting lightning at you. And this isn't just any lightning. This is special lightning that kills your options.
Yeah, that's kind of frustrating. Well, I guess this version of the boss is a lot harder. Well, a little harder. I think like I have like a blemish at the corner of my mouth that looks like a cold sore or something, which is not the most attractive. That's not a good look. Me. I think it's just a zit though. Pretty sure, if memory serves. Or I could have nicked myself shaving, because I used to shave right before I recorded these at the very beginning. Then eventually you'll see that like there's episodes where I have part of a beard, and then there's like I think like the Aladdin video, I have like this sort of ridiculous like playoff beard that's really scraggly looking. I'm much better about manicuring my facial hair now than I was when I was in my 20s. So that one that closes at the end is such a jerk. It's unbelievable. Also, that t-shirt that I'm wearing, I don't know that I still have that. I feel like I must. It's an IRS Records t-shirt. They were a sort of indie label in the 80s that put out a lot of good records. I got that t-shirt at a Hot Topic, and I remember being really surprised that was in a Hot Topic, because I didn't think many people who shopped at Hot Topic would know who IRS Records was. Since they were defunct in, I think, the early 90s. They went out of business. Or not out of business, because they were just discontinued. That label was discontinued, but I think they were owned by like A&M, if memory serves. Anyways, you're not watching this for the record label history, but I really like that t-shirt, and I'm not sure if I still have it, but if I have so many t-shirts, it's hard to say. That's another thing. You also notice that I don't think I've been very careful to avoid wearing the same t-shirt twice. When I did the Avengers episode, I wore my Marvel t-shirt, and I thought I had worn it in an earlier episode, but I couldn't find what episode that would have been, so I think I'm still good. I think I'm 100% on having never worn the same shirt in 2 episodes. Right. Yeah, well, you can tell because this guy makes a show about differences between 30-year-old video games.
The engine version looks much better.
Boom.
Oddly enough, the NES version lacks any credit sequence. It plays the same.
And there's the old Konami logo. Remember when Konami wasn't just a vile pit of awfulness? Do you remember that? It's been a while, but it's true. That used to be a thing. I wouldn't be surprised if Metal Gear Solid 5 is the last Konami game I ever buy. In terms of, the release, I guess. I'll still buy a Konami games. I don't have all of their old games, but in terms of their new games, new releases.
Honestly,
So,
even though the PC
yeah.
engine version is better looking and better sounding, the levels in the NES game are so much more interesting and better designed. The Gradius power-up system allows for more versatility, making it the better game in my book.
Boom.
On the flip side, the PC engine version is still great and a must-own for any shoot-'em-up fan. Still,
No.
it's treachery
I still feel that way.
the easiest way
If you're
to
curious.
have a Japanese PlayStation Network account.
Um,
They're not that hard to set up, and
yeah.
you can import cards to buy the game for 600 points, which is about $7.
Yeah, the Japanese PlayStation Network has a ton of PC Engine games.
Not only are both of these games available, but so is the MSX version of Salamander, which is yet again a completely different
MSX Salamander.
Sadly,
That's a thing that I
console,
should probably talk about at some point.
but it's easily worth your $5 there, if you don't already have the card.
Which really isn't that bad when you think about it. That hasn't really gone up much since then, if at all. It's pretty rare for PC Engine games to move in price a lot. It's not a super popular system over here, so. And the Japanese collector market is a lot more stable than the US collector market, so. Oh, awkward crossfade. That's terrible. I didn't even remember that was in here. It's always bothered me when people do single takes and then cut, unless it's a stylistic choice, which in a lot of cases it is. But for some people, it's not a stylistic choice. It's a I can't do a monologue choice. Yeah. Well, there you go. That's it. That's the first episode of Same Name, Different Game. And I hope you enjoyed this commentary track, and there will be another commentary track coming up soon within the next couple of weeks for a different episode that was, there was some voting that was done with people to decide what episode that would happen with. So there will be another episode with a commentary track coming up soon. Thanks again to everybody for subscribing. Really appreciate it, and hope you enjoyed this. I hope it was insightful for you, and thanks for watching.